Please repeat ala salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك أيها البشير النذير والسراج المنير صلى الله عليك سيدي وعلى ابنك المظلوم الشهيد العطشان الظمآن حسين يا حسين حسين يا حسين سيدي وساداتي يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما صلى على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل. Before we begin, I'd like to once again remember and appreciate, firstly, the brothers and sisters that have come tonight, and more specifically, the brothers and sisters around the world in our community, in our global community, who are experiencing some form of mental illness, some form of emotional disease, those who are going through depression or anxiety, or PTSD, or experiencing some form of trauma. I'd like to remember them with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. It's important to acknowledge each other and to remember each other, and to know that if you are experiencing something like this, that you are part of a community, you are part of a family, a global family that is there for you, to support you and to help you. It's an honor to be with you guys once again, and I'm gonna apologize in advance, because tonight's talk is gonna involve you guys focusing and paying attention. It's gonna be a lot to cover and very little time. I'd like to begin with the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilma. Oh Allah, teach us what benefits us and benefit us from what you've taught us, and increase in our knowledge. Before we begin with tonight's talk into our spiritual discussion, I'd like to provide some context and an outline for what we are about to discuss. We've been talking about the inner kingdom and the different paradigms within the human being, the different components that make us who we are. And we said that we are composed of 5 different components. We said that we are the palace, we have the body, and we discussed that last night. We have the emotions, which act out as our guardians. We have the heart, which is the throne. We have the prime minister, which is the mind, and we have the king, which is the soul. Tonight, we're going to examine the guardians of this palace. We are going to delve deep into the emotions and try and understand this topic in hopefully in a more holistic perspective. Now, I do want you to keep in mind that there is going to be a lot of points that I'm going to be covering tonight. This does not mean that I'm going to be discussing emotions from a complete perspective. This might need you or require you to do some further research if necessary, but I'm going to, inshallah, provide a foundation for you to build off, because this is a topic, unfortunately, that isn't spoken much about in our communities. You know, we are often taught or told, or we have this misconception that being emotional is the negative thing. emotions or understanding my emotions or adhering to my emotions is a negative thing. And we have this negative stigma behind being emotional. And we think, especially as men, we think men are not emotional and women are emotional, and therefore men aren't allowed to express emotion and women are always expressing their emotion. And this cannot be further from the truth. So inshallah, to discover this through a metaphorical lens, we are going to examine emotions in 5 phases. The first phase, we're going to talk about the 2 forces that drive all human behavior. And that is pain and pleasure. In the second phase, we are going to discover and explore the nature of our emotions. And we're going to discuss some of the issues relating to the mental health crisis that is happening in today's society. In phase 3, we're going to discuss the phenomenon of emotional bullying within families especially, and how it looks, how the image of emotional bullying looks and its impact. In phase 4, we're going to talk about the developing emotional intelligence, or what is called EQ. And hopefully we're going to provide some practical ways so we can develop our emotional intelligence. So for the brothers and sisters that have phones out there, I encourage you to take out your phone, not to post anything on social media, not to write anything on WhatsApp, but maybe take some notes down, because hopefully you can take these points and implement them in your life. And in the last phase, we are going to observe a practical example which exemplifies extraordinary resilience and wisdom in how to manage our emotions through the story of Muslim ibn Aqil, inshallah. Now, if you would allow me, I want you to prepare your hearts, open your minds as we delve into this topic. And we'll begin with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, before we begin with these phases, we want to relate what we're talking about to the analogy we began with. We said that emotions are the guardians of the inner kingdom. So what are emotions? Emotions, when we talk about emotions and feelings, we're talking about the physical and physiological response to external and internal stimuli. Now, what does this mean? It means that, basically, in a very simple term, emotions, the thing that you feel, the emotions that you feel, whether it's happiness, sadness, sorrow, anxiety to a certain extent, joy, all of these feelings that you have are the way that your body reacts to something that is happening either inside of you, like thoughts or memories, or experiences outside of you. So something happens outside. So, for example, if someone, let's say Ali, felt worried because he has a test. And because of this test and because of the worry, he started to study more. Remember, we said emotions are the guardians. They begin to push and influence your behavior. So Ali is feeling worried about the test, so he begins to study more. But because he's worried, he becomes a bit more quiet. When he's at the dinner table with his family, he's a bit more quiet. He's nervous. And then when he got the good grade, because he studied hard, he felt happy and he felt excited. So he called his best friend and then he started to celebrate. He spoke to his parents. You see that the fluctuation of emotions from worry from nervousness, worry to happiness and excitement started to impacts the way Ali would interact with the outside world. So emotions are the responses that sometimes or initially they come as automatic responses to the outside world. They are automatic, and I promise this is going to make so much more sense in a moment. But they automatically they allow you to respond to what's happening around you. They influence the way we think, they influence the way we act. That's why you'll be sitting with someone that you know, someone that's close to you. Without them saying a word, you could tell, and you say, bro, what's wrong with you? Is everything okay? They haven't even uttered a word, but you can tell just by the way the palace is, by the way the body is, the way they're expressing their body, you could tell that something is happening internally. Something is happening, the behavior is changing. So emotions highly impact the way we act, the way we think, and the way we behave. Now, we said that emotions are the guardians. So how are they the guardians? Now, let's discover this. Let's enter phase 1 of our talk. And we're talking about the 2 driving forces of our behavior. In order to appreciate the nature of our emotions, we firstly have to comprehend the two forces that drive all human behavior. And that is the inclination and drive towards pleasure or comfort, and the need to avert or to flee from pain. Everything you do is either because it brings you some form of comfort, or you don't do it because it brings you some form of pain. And that is the essence, and that is the beginning of all emotion. So, pleasure and pain can also be seen as two sides to the same coin. Two sides to the same coin, two sides to the same experience. I'll give you an example. You might have been through a very tough time in your early days. And most people that are successful in life, they say, I was just sitting with a brother yesterday, or today actually, and I was discussing with him, and I said, you look, you seem like you've become really successful. You seem like, everything's going well in your life. He says, Alhamdulillah, but I went through a lot to get here. And most of us can relate to this, where you've experienced so much for it to lead. And then I ask you, these experiences that you had in your upbringing or in your early days or in your past, when you were going through it, how painful was it? You say it was extremely painful. But do you regret it? No, I don't. Because if it weren't for that pain, I wouldn't have felt the pleasure that came after. Two sides to the same coin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna ma'al usri yusra. That surely with hardship comes ease. Not before hardship, not after hardship. They come together as a package. But when you're in the midst of it, it needs extreme emotional intelligence, and we're going to talk about this in a moment, to be able to say, where is the pain and where is the comfort? Where is the pleasure and where is the hardship? So you find yourself constantly being pulled between these two states, in your mind and in your body. We're constantly being pushed away from painful states towards comfortable states. And our emotions are what guide us. It's the inner guidance towards the pleasure, our inner guidance away from pain. Now, when you experience something like excitement, like desire, like thrill, like bliss, like joy, all of these experiences, these emotional experiences, they arise out of wanting to attain or move towards something that is pleasurable, something that is fulfilling. Remember a time, think of a time that you felt very happy, very excited. It's because the thing that you were thinking about or you were about to experience was something that was going to bring you some form of pleasure, some form of happiness. And so you start to feel this happiness or excitement in your body. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, when you're nervous, when you're sad, when you're angry, you start to feel it in your body. Your heart starts to beat in a certain way. People say, I have butterflies in my stomach. Your face might get red. The way you're feeling is expressed in your body. And when I say physical, I'm saying physical appearance. When I say physiological, I'm talking inside, internally. So, for example, let's look at something like anxiety, right? People have misunderstood anxiety to be a negative thing. Now, yes, in its extremity, it can be extremely painful. But anxiety itself as a mechanism, if we need anxiety, because it's through anxiety you know whether you're doing something right or you're doing something wrong. Whether, for example, when Ali was anxious about his exam, it pushed him to study. Had he not felt anxious about his exam, he wouldn't have studied. So when you have a deadline and you feel anxious about your deadline, you feel like, oh, I have to work, I have to do something. You become motivated to act. So anxiety itself is not a negative thing. Emotions are not negative. Anger is not negative. It's when they take control of the internal kingdom, that's when it becomes destructive. It's when your emotions overtake your mind that becomes destructive. It's when your emotions take control of your body, it becomes destructive. But in itself, in its essence, it's not negative at all. And that's why they are there to guard you. They are there to guard the inner kingdom. Because if you were to truly understand every emotion that you have, and I'm going to touch upon this in a moment, then you'll understand that each emotion that you're having has a specific use, a specific meaning. And there's wisdom behind understanding the line between the pleasure of this emotion and the pain of this emotion. Now let's explore this further. Let's talk more about emotions and mental health. Please recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I came across some powerful statistics and I thought I'd share them with you guys on this topic, specifically about the Muslim community in the United Kingdom. Listen to these statistics. Depression affects and impacts over 300 million people globally. Now, some other statistics say much more than 300 million. But in the UK, around 1 in 5 adults experiences depression or anxiety. So to put it into perspective, if we had, for every 5 people that are in this hall right now, 1 of you is depressed or anxious. Imagine the impact. Now, you might think, no, but this isn't for Muslims because we're Muslims and we have God and we don't feel anxiety and we don't feel depression. On the contrary, for British Muslims, 26% report being more depressed than the general population. For British Muslims. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among who? The young adults between ages 15 and 29. In the UK itself, suicide rates have increased across all ethnic groups, but more particularly for young men and more particularly also for South Asian women. Now, anxiety disorders. Anxiety affects over 300 million people worldwide. In the UK, 8.2% of people experience generalized anxiety disorder. I'm not just throwing these statistics at you for no reason. I want to show you guys that this topic of mental health, and especially when it comes to emotional awareness, is extremely important. It's extremely important that we all are aware of the numbers. Because you might be speaking to a friend or to a brother and he might smile in your face and you might think all's good, but behind the scenes this guy is going through emotional and internal turmoil. So what are the causes of these statistics? Why has it become such a phenomenon? Why has depression or the rates of depression and anxiety and suicide and PTSD rise so much? It's because there is a major imbalance or an excess in how we manage our emotions. When you feel something, let's say for example, I use this with my students as well. I give this example. Say, Noah, for example, is a young boy. He goes to sleep one night really late and he wakes up really early for school and he's already tired and he didn't get much sleep. He's frustrated. And he wants to get ready for school, but he can't find his clothes. So he gets a bit more frustrated. Then he wants to prepare his breakfast, but his favorite cereal isn't there. So he gets more frustrated. Then he's going on the bus to go to school and he can't find his seat. There's no place for him to sit. So he gets more frustrated. And then he gets to school and he goes into class and he gets bullied by someone in class. So he gets more frustrated. Then he gets his exam results and he doesn't get the result that he wants. So he gets more frustrated. And then towards the end of the day, when he's getting back on the bus, a girl pushes him by accident. She bumps into him by accident. So he unleashes all of his anger on her. And I tell my student, I say, why did he unleash his anger? And they say, because he was pushed by the girl. I say, no. It's because throughout the day, he constantly felt frustrated, but he didn't speak about it to anyone. He didn't release his frustration. The emotions built up and built up and built up and built up until he just unleashed on the person that it wasn't intended to. Now, this is a very minor example. Every one of us can apply it. Something happens, something small. You're in a relationship with your wife. Something small happens. You come late one day from work. Another day you come late from, you're out with your friends. Another day she asked you to get the groceries and you didn't get the groceries. Another day she felt like you're not paying attention. Another day, and then one day you accidentally drop the cup and the glass breaks and she unleashes on you. And you think, but it's just a cup. Why are you getting angry? It's just a cup. I'll buy another cup. But it's not because of the cup. It's because there was so much that was happening along the way that it was unaddressed. And because we've reached the time where we leave our emotions so long unchecked. When was the last time you sat with yourself and said, I'm angry? Why am I feeling angry? Brothers, I want to ask you a question. When was the last time you sat down and done absolutely nothing? You didn't go on your phone, you didn't speak to anyone, you didn't go on social media, you didn't play a game. You simply just sat down and done nothing. How often do we sit down with ourselves and do absolutely nothing? Rarely. We're constantly, and boys, brothers and sisters, we're going to speak about the mind in a couple of nights, but you're going to find a big difference between the way our mind works and the way our emotions work. See, I can right now say, think of a blue van, think of a car, think of chocolate, and you can jump from one thought to another thought. Van, chocolate, eating, prayers, namaz, all of these stuff. You can think about so many things. But when it comes to emotions, you can't do the same. You can't feel happy, sad, anxious, confident, all within the span of 2 seconds. Emotions need time. Emotions need time to be expressed in your body. That's why someone might say to you, bro, what's wrong? Is everything okay? You seem like you're down, and you say, I don't know, I feel weird, but I don't know what I feel. I can't explain it. Has anyone ever felt that? Where you're feeling something, but you can't explain how you're feeling. It's because your body is feeling something that you thought about. It was expressing something that happened maybe a day or two ago, but it's just catching up right now. Some form of stress, some form of anxiety, some form of nervousness, some form of anger. And you're still feeling something that happened 2 or 3 days ago because you didn't address it back then. You're feeling it now, and you don't even know why. Because it takes time to be expressed in your body. It takes time to be expressed in your physiology. And so when you're living in a fast-paced society, especially in the West, it's so fast-paced. Whether you're in school, whether you're working, whatever you're doing. Life in the West is just simply very fast-paced. And so your mind's constantly stimulated. And therefore your emotions are constantly jumping. You're constantly fluctuating. And when you can't catch up, when your mind can't catch up to your emotions, you start to feel anxious. And that's why anxiety is increasing, because they're throwing at us information, instant gratification. All of this stuff is happening at us at such a fast rate, and we can't catch up with it. So we're all over the place. And that's why, now, when you have these unregulated emotions, it leads to this form of statistics. But another reason why we have this crisis is unfortunately because of the stigma surrounding mental health. The stigma, the negative stigma behind the struggles that people face through mental health. Bro, it's okay. Why are you feeling depressed? Just go pray, read some Quran. It's all good. You're a Muslim. You shouldn't feel depressed. You shouldn't feel anxious. Do you remember the statistic? 26% Muslims, especially in the UK, experience depression more than the general population. Don't tell me that Quran is the solution. Of course it's part of the solution. But when someone is depressed, we're talking clinical, when someone's going through a really tough time emotionally, and they're not checking and they're not regulating their emotions, when they go through this for a long time, the idea of picking up the Quran and reading is a drag. It's hard to actually pick up the Quran. It's not like, hey, I don't want to read the Quran to overcome my depression. No, it's that I'm finding it hard to be alone in my own mind. So what do? I go on TikTok. What do? I go scroll through Instagram. What do? I jump on the PS5. What do? I jump on the internet. Unfortunately, even for some of the younger brothers, pornography. Because we're too afraid of being in our own mind. And this causes a rift. Between me and myself, it causes a rift. So, when it comes to emotions, Islam has always encouraged the maintenance of a sound mind, body and spirit. This triangle of mind, body and spirit is to create the harmony within us. Please recite ala salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imagine the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. He experienced extreme in severe emotional distress. But he was always able to maintain his state. His son passes away. He maintains his state. The Holy Prophet endured a lot. People called him a liar. People called him a sorcerer. People called him a magician. People threw rubbish at him. They mocked him. And he cried. And he would confide in Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam. He would speak to her and tell her of the pain that he's experiencing. But he would not give in to the emotion. He would always, as the king of the inner kingdom, be in control of the emotion. He would allow himself to feel it. He would allow himself to experience it. But he would overcome it. He'd stay stronger than it. He wouldn't give into it. And that's why he was always composed and he was in control. And he had this emotional mastery. The Holy Prophet is narrated to say, a strong person is not one who can wrestle. Is not one who can fight only. A strong person is one who can control himself at the time of anger. That's where strength lies. When you're angry, how do you control yourself? Remember the example we gave yesterday of Imam Ali alayhi salam, where when they spat in his face, he controlled himself. He walked away. And brothers and sisters, we're going to talk about this in a moment, but one of the most powerful ways of controlling yourself is through utilizing the other dimensions of your inner kingdom. Your body is one of them. If you feel like you're going through a very tough time emotionally, don't give in to the emotion. Try and utilize your body in a way to overpower the emotion. And we're going to talk about this in a moment. But I want you guys to understand that when your guardians are overwhelmed, when your guardians are feeling internal chaos, they can't protect the kingdom. They can't take control of the kingdom. They can't ensure that the mind is working in a healthy manner. So if you want to protect your inner kingdom, you must master the way you control your emotions, and we're going to talk about that. Now, let's go to phase 3. Let's discuss an important phenomena in our communities, and that is the idea or the concept of emotional bullying, especially in our families. Now, emotional bullying within families is extremely destructive. Because it's what is emotional bullying? It's when members of the family use emotions as a weapon to psychologically torment and control other people in the family. And for example, how does it look? When you're constantly criticizing, when you're constantly judging, when you're constantly insulting, when you're constantly humiliating someone in your family. Even if it's as a joke. Even if it's in a way, when you demean someone, when you speak to your younger brother or your younger sister or your daughter or your son in a way where you make them feel low, when you mock their achievements, when you criticize them for the little small things that they do, you make them feel like they're insignificant. This is emotional bullying. Don't think bullying just comes in the form of physical violence. Emotional bullying is one of the greatest causes of severe depression and anxiety in our households. Emotional bullying is one of the reasons why our brothers, our younger brothers, the youth of our community are leaving Islam. Because they look at the role models in their family and they say, if he's treating me like this, what's Islam for? What's the point of Islam? And they feel comfortable outside of this group, outside of this environment. So they go out. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, taught kindness, taught compassion, to respect everyone in all relationships, and to make sure that the people that are victims of this violence, this emotional violence, are spoken to. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Just to conclude this point, it's our role, it's the duty of every single one of us, brothers and sisters, that we stand up firmly against emotional bullying. Whether it's in your family, whether it's on the street, whether it's anywhere you see someone bullying another person emotionally, taking advantage of their emotions, mocking them, criticizing them, you must stand up for it. Stand up against it. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about dhulm in the Holy Quran, dhulm, oppression, He's not just talking about physical oppression. Because dhulm, we all know that if you were to transgress against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and commit sin, Allah huwa ghafurun rahim, He's the most merciful and He will forgive you. But if you were to transgress another person, of course God can forgive you, but you must seek forgiveness from the other person. Why? Because God is not impacted by your sin, but this other person is impacted by your bullying, and it might not leave them. It might not leave them for a long time. On the contrary, it might drive them for the rest of their life. One word you say to someone that you might think is just a joke, it's nothing, it's simple, we're kids, it's okay, can stay with them for a long time. They can identify with this. You call someone fat and you say, I'm joking, man, look how I said it. And they hear that I'm fat. For example, when I was in the school that I work at, in the beginning stages when I first started, I was walking with one of the students, and there was a sister walking in front of us, and she was smaller. She's big. She's like big. She's very tall for her age, mashallah. And he called her giant. Now she laughed and she walked off, and I'm like, bro, how can you call her giant? He's like, that's just her nickname. Like, we all call her giant. I'm like, no one is to call her giant. I don't care if you take it as a joke, and I don't care if she perceives it as a joke. Because 100% it's going to impact her self-esteem. It's going to impact her identity. It's going to impact how she perceives herself, her respect towards herself, and the way other people respect her. So make sure you watch for your words. Now, let's get into more practical. Firstly, what is emotional intelligence? Because we said that emotions are the guardians of this inner kingdom, right? And we said that the guardians play a vital role in how they guide this inner realm within us. But to fulfill their purpose effectively, what has to happen is they have to be mastered. How are they mastered? Through emotional intelligence. How are they mastered? Through EQ, emotional intelligence. So what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is different to normal intellectual intelligence. Emotional intelligence is understanding and skillfully managing the guardians to maintain harmony and order in this inner kingdom. Emotional intelligence allows us to recognize emotions and express them in a constructive way. In a way where you're not bringing animosity to yourself or to other people. Developing emotional intelligence allows the guardians within us to alert us of certain threats in a wise manner. It helps us strengthen the way we are empathetic to other people, to other people's emotions. It allows us to understand, if I'm sitting with someone right now and he's upset or he's feeling in a certain way or she's feeling in a certain way, how should I speak to them? What do they want to hear? How can I speak in a way where they can really feel like I understand what they're experiencing, what they're feeling? Or even between you and yourself. In essence, developing emotional intelligence is how to harmonize your emotions and make sure that they're driven in order of the Prime Minister. So with reason and intellect. So it's not to say that you don't feel emotional. It's not to say that you don't feel sad or anxious or angry. It's that you make sure that you drive your anger and your sadness and your anxiety in a healthy manner. For example, Muharram. Muharram is a perfect time, or a perfect example. Because in Muharram, most of us are sad. But the way we express this sadness is through our tears for Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam. The way we express our sadness and sorrow is through latm. That's how we express our sadness. We don't go screaming at people and hitting people. It's an emotional and a healthy way of expressing our emotions. Subhanallah. Subhanallah how interrelated these are. Where Al-Husayn ibratun wa abra. The Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam's message has emotion that's infused with intellect and knowledge. It's through the immersion between these two that you're able to grow. So you must be able to utilize your emotions. So I want to just, and this is where I want you guys, if you want to write, you can write, but this, I'm going to mention some key headings right now, inshallah, in your own time, because each one of these headings that I'm about to mention needs its own lecture, and we don't have time for that. But I'm going to mention to you now the 4 core building blocks of emotional intelligence, and just some examples on how to develop them. Is everyone with me? Is everything okay? Everyone okay? Because I feel like I've been speaking a lot. Is everyone okay? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. For those that came late, I apologize in advance because I said that I'm going to be speaking a lot and there's going to be a lot of information. If you missed that, it's your fault. It's not my fault. Ya Ali. Santum. Ya Ali. So, the 4 core building blocks of emotional intelligence. If you want to be an emotionally intelligent person, these are the 4 things that you need. Number 1, you need self-awareness. What is self-awareness? Self-awareness is your ability to understand your emotions, to understand your strengths, to understand your weaknesses, your values, your motivations, to understand your thoughts. Not to identify with them, to understand them, to understand, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling right now? Why am I thinking what I'm thinking right now? When I have this core belief or this core value, where did this come from? Where did I gain this piece of information? Why am I feeling anxious? I remember one time this happened to me. I was driving and I was feeling so anxious, and you know, when you're feeling anxious, your heart starts to beat quickly, your face starts to change color. And I'm thinking, why am I feeling so anxious? And I started to think, did something happen? Did I go through something? Did someone say something to me? Is it a confidence issue? I realized why I was feeling anxious. Guess why I was feeling anxious? Because I had too much caffeine that day. I'm being serious. When you drink too much caffeine, caffeine strips your body from water. When you don't drink enough water and hydrate your body starts to... So the anxiety that I was feeling physically and physiologically didn't stem from lack of confidence or from something happening. It was simply because I did not have enough water in my body. So I went and drank water and I was good. Had I not sat down and identified this, then I would have just felt anxious and I gave in to the anxiety and just kept feeling anxious for the next day or two. So ask yourself, become aware. Whoever feels like they speak to themselves, be honest. Who speaks to themselves? If you say no, I don't think you feel you're being truthful, because everyone speaks to themselves. Everyone has an internal dialogue, and it's very healthy to have an internal dialogue. If you don't have an internal dialogue, it's because you're constantly stimulated through social media. I suggest you put your phone aside for a week or two and really become aware of this internal dialogue. When you speak to yourself, become aware of what you're saying. Become aware of what's happening inside your mind. Critical and key to developing a strong sense of emotional intelligence. Number 2, so self-awareness, number 1. Number 2, self-control or self-management. So not only do you need to recognize your emotions, recognize your thoughts and where they're coming from, but you need to know, how do I respond? When I get angry, how do I respond to my anger? When I get nervous, how do I respond to my nervousness? Dr. Stephen Covey says something beautiful in his books, The 7 Habits, and he's referring to Dr. Viktor Frankl in another book. He says, between stimulus and response, so between what happens to you and what you do about it, there's a gap. He says, this gap will be filled if you don't take control and choose what you do. So between what happens to me and what I do about it is freedom. When I get angry, I scream and I shout. Why do I scream and I shout? Because growing up, that's how I saw my father react to anger. That's how I saw my environment react to anger. That's how I saw people, when they get angry, they scream and they shout, they resort to violence. So, because I constantly started to resort to violence and scream and I shout, now anytime I got angry, this was my response. But if I am to sit down and say, hold on, I'm angry. Why am I angry? How am I going to respond to this? Take a deep breath. How am I going to respond? I don't want to scream and shout. I don't want to be violent. You know what? I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to take a few deep breaths. I'm going to meditate for a bit. boof. Instantly, I've now controlled myself. Self-management and control is also critical. Take this point and you can work on it and read upon it yourself. Number 3, social awareness. Oh, I'm running late. 3, social awareness. So not just understanding yourself, but also being aware of other people around you. Emotional intelligence, a core block of emotional intelligence is understanding if someone's upset or angry in front of me right now, and he or she gets angry when something happens. When someone, for example, puts a particular noha on and they're angry. You know, I know, for example, my father gets really angry when you put a particular noha on. Then if I see him angry, I won't put this particular noha on. Very simple. If I know that the person in front of me reacts in a negative way when something happens and he's feeling angry or she's feeling angry or feeling upset or feeling nervous or feeling sad, then I have to understand their emotional state and try and work with it, empathize with it, and be very aware of how I work with it. And number 4, the 4th building block is relationship management. And that is to build relationships that are strong, inspiring. Brotherhood is essential. And relationships are essential. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. It's not إياك أعبد وإياك أستعين. The difference is, it's you that we obey. It's you that we serve, not I. Islam is all about we. It's all about jama'ah. It's all about relationships. It's all about society. So making sure that you develop healthy relationships is critical. Now, before we enter the masa'ib, I just want to provide you guys with some key strategies that you can utilize to develop your sense of emotional intelligence. The first strategy, and this is key, is meditation and mindfulness. Now, there's a difference between meditation and mindfulness and prayer, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But essentially, if I want to explain meditation in the best way possible, meditation, you know when you want to turn off your computer, you click shut down and you have so many tabs open. It says, close all the tabs before you shut it down, shut the computer down, right? Meditation is essentially you shutting down all the tabs in your mind. Because your mind's constantly working, you're constantly thinking, you're constantly stimulated. Even when you're sleeping, don't think your mind turns off. That's why dreams happen. That's where learning happens. That's where something called neuroplasticity happens, right? Where your mind starts to build bonds. And when learning, by the way, just as a fun fact, learning happens mostly when you're asleep. You learn this lecture right now that we're talking about. It's only if you were to really think about what we're talking about, when you go to sleep, that's when your mind says, oh, this is what you learned today, and it starts to solidify this information. That's why sleep is crucial to your own development. Anyway, so your mind's constantly working. Meditation is the time where you sit down and you switch it off. You just sit down and you allow yourself to watch your thoughts go. You watch these thoughts pass. You don't go, it's like, for example, imagine you're sitting down on the side of the road and you're watching cars drive on a highway, right? Meditation is you sitting down on the side of the road and each car represents your thoughts and you're just watching the thoughts drive past. What happens usually is when people find it hard to meditate is because they go to the car and they enter the car. They go to the thought and they indulge into the thought. So your goal is to just step back and allow your mind to just do its thing. And this helps calm your mind and your body, and it allows you to become more measured in how you respond to your emotions. Number 2, brothers and sisters, is to seek professional help. If you feel like you're in a very tough state emotionally, there's nothing wrong with seeking help. Go to a professional, a psychologist, to a counselor. Speak your problems. Speak about how you're feeling. Discuss it with someone. Get a third perspective. Get a third point of view. And that is of utmost help. Number 3, and we just discussed this yesterday, is physical exercise. Exercise is one of the most powerful ways to control your emotional state and to develop emotional control. Because it creates a biochemical balance in your brain and it helps you enhance your mood. Number 4, is communication and support. This is where a strong foundation comes in. Friends, brothers, community, someone that you trust, someone that you know wants what's best for you. Sit with them, talk to them, tell them, bro, I've been going through 1, 2, 3. I've been experiencing, I went through this at work and it was really tough. Someone said this to me and it made me feel really anxious and nervous about myself, and I started to feel really down. Discuss, get other perspectives. Number 5, and this is the most important, spiritual practices. Prayer, dhikr, Quran, dua. When you utilize these, and brothers, when you read the dua, you're not just reading words. The Imam is providing you with a platform so you can see how he thinks. You can listen to how the Imam thinks. These are the words of the Imam, meaning these are the thoughts of the Imam, meaning these are the feelings of the Imam. So indulge into the thoughts and the feelings of the Imam. Allow yourself to enter this realm through dua and through dhikr. And it helps you, it allows you to navigate through this storm. Forgive me, I know I've taken a lot of your time. We are almost done. Please recite ala salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So mindfulness and meditation, seeking professional help, physical exercise, communication and support, and spiritual practices. Let's go into the final phase and let's see how the story of Muslim ibn Aqil alayhi salam, the beloved cousin of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, how he portrays an incredible amount of resilience in the face of severe adversity. This story begins when Imam Hussein alayhi salam sends his cousin to Kufa, Muslim. Thousands of people have told the Imam, we are waiting for you, come, please come. We want to rise against Yazid. We are with you. They've pledged allegiance. So the Imam sends Muslim. And on the journey, Muslim faces a lot of hardship. 2 of his friends pass away, and it's really tough time for him. But eventually, Muslim arrives in Kufa. And when he arrives in Kufa, the people are waiting for him, and they flock to him in the thousands. In the thousands. Finally, you're here, we are waiting. And he is the messenger of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So loyalty and support has been provided. And the energy is building up. And the people are waiting Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. But this instantly flips. At the time, Nu'man ibn al-Bashir was the governor of Kufa. And he sends a letter to Yazid saying, so-and-so is happening, Muslim is getting some big support, we have to do something. Yazid then takes one of his governors from Basra, which was Ubaydullah bin Ziyad, and he says, go to Kufa. And Ubaydullah bin Ziyad, within almost instantly, begins to manipulate the people to abandon Muslim. He begins to threaten, he begins to intimidate, he begins to bribe. In a matter of days, he kills some of the closest companions to Imam Hussein and to Muslim. He begins to imprison the many companions like Hani ibn Urwa, Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. Muslim finds himself eventually, from thousands and thousands of people that have pledged their allegiance, that have given the bay'ah, that are waiting and preparing for the Imam, all of a sudden he feels deserted. Now, imagine the betrayal that Muslim felt. Imagine how afraid he was for Imam Hussein, for the safety of Abu Abdullah, because when he had gained all of this support, he sent a letter to Abu Abdullah. He says, Ya Abu Abdullah, I've got the thousands of people, they're all waiting for you. Yalla, make your way to Kufa. So in his mind, they didn't have WhatsApp back then. They didn't have social media back then. In his mind, his master, Abu Abdullah, is coming to Kufa. And within only a day or two, the people have flipped. But his master is still coming. Imagine the excruciating pain. Imagine the emotional pain. Imagine the disloyalty that he was experiencing. Imagine the outrage. Imagine the hopelessness. What can he do? Some people would have given in and broken to this. But Muslim was strong. And he exemplified the verse of the Holy Quran, لا تحزن إن الله معنا. Don't grieve, surely Allah is with us. But it reaches a stage where in the evening, Muslim finds himself alone in a mosque, no more than 30 companions, and he realizes that the numbers are slowly dropping. He leaves the mosque and he goes to the gates of Kinda. And by the time he reaches these gates, the numbers have dropped to 10 people. Allahu Akbar, imagine, from thousands of supporters, and now less than 10 companions are with him. As he continues to walk, he's in the street. By the way, brothers, Muslim isn't from Kufa. It's like, I'm from Sydney, right? I came and I was walking in Woking and I felt alone by myself. I don't know the streets of Woking, but I have friends, I know people are looking forward, waiting for me. Muslim is in a land, he's not from this land. He doesn't know these people. He's alone and he's walking, and now not only does he know anyone, he's wanted. They want to kill him. So he's walking, and now these 10 slowly drop and drop until he is now alone. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, what an experience. He stumbles upon a house and he's sitting down. Imagine. A general, a companion, the cousin of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is sitting down. Brothers, imagine right now we went outside and we saw someone sitting down outside on a doorstep crying. How bad would you feel? How heartbroken would you feel? Muslim is sitting down outside the house of a woman called Tawa. And she's waiting for her son's return and he's sitting there. Muslim greets her and she looks and she says, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "I'm thirsty. I've been walking, I don't know where to go. I don't know anyone in this place. And I just found this doorstep and I just sat down and I'm really thirsty." So she brings him a cup of water, and then she comes back and she goes inside. She comes back and she finds him still sitting there. "Oh man, what are you still doing here? I gave you water. You can leave now." He says, "I have neither kin nor clan in this city. Can you please offer me shelter? And perhaps I can repay you your kindness." Muslim's words resonated in poetic fashion, saying, "My eyes are full of tears. I have no family and no clan. I am a stranger in a land that's not mine. I am Muslim, son of Aqil, son of Abu Talib, and I am lost without a guide." Upon hearing his name, Tawha allowed Muslim to take shelter in her home, providing him with a bed and some food. But his concern and his anxiety led him to spend the night in prayer, lost in quiet supplication and Quran recitation. As dawn approached, Taw'a brought water for Muslim's wudu, and remarked, and on his restless night, he confessed about a dream that he had, a vision of his uncle Imam Ali calling out to him with urgency. Muslim interpreted this as a sign that his end was near. Suddenly the peaceful morning was interrupted by the sound of the thundering sound of the hooves of men and the men's voices. Muslim's solitary refuge had been discovered. 300 men stormed the house. Muslim feared they would set fire to the house, so he went out and he began fighting them until they were driven out of the house. And then they returned and they charged. And then he started fighting fiercely as he recited, "Death is inevitable, do what you can. You will drink the cup cup of death. No doubt be patient for the will of God. His majesty is sublime. God's judgment upon creation is inevitable. He fought bravely, killing many of them. He was so strong that he would grab a man and throw him. Ibn Ash'ath sent a message to Ibn Ziyad saying, send me more horses and more men. Muslim has killed many of us. He then sent him reinforcements and told him to offer Muslim safety because they could not defeat him without this promise. As Muslim continued to fight, he clashed with Bakr ibn Humran. Bakr struck Muslim's mouth, cutting his upper lip and severed his 2 front teeth. Muslim then charged the crowd. Seeing this, they started throwing stones at him from the rooftops, setting fire to bundles of reeds. Then they started throwing at him. Upon seeing this, he confronted them. Muhammad ibn Ash'ath said, you have our guarantee of safety. Muslim, don't kill yourself. Muslim responded, what guarantee is there for treacherous traitors? He engaged them in combat, reciting, أقسمت لا أقتل إلا حرا وإن رأيت الموت كأسا مرا كل امرئ يوما ملاق شرا أخاف أن أخدع وأغر. I pledge to meet death only as a free soul. Even if life's end tastes like a bitter bowl, every person one day meets their hardest trial. I fear not deceit, nor temptations vile. Allahu Akbar. His soul a sacrifice for the cause. His soul had been worn and wounded, his body wounded, unable to battle anymore. Imagine this scene, brothers and sisters. He's back against the house's edge. They begin to strike him with stones and with arrows. Why hurl at me, O stones, like you would at disbelievers? From behind, as Muslim is fighting, a man from behind comes and advances and he strikes him. Tears welled in his eyes, his voice saddened. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ubaydullah ibn Abbas spoke. He says, he who seeks what you seek should not cry when faced with such ease. But he replied, by Allah, it's not for myself that I weep, but for my kin who march towards me, for my beloved Habibi Hussein and his family, who can carry the message to the city, who can carry the message and inform Abdullah of this wreckage. Muslim is now alone with no one to lend a hand, faced with a crowd shifting as the desert sand. He turned to Ibn al-Ash'ath, pleading in despair, could you send a message to Hussein and tell him of the snare? Tell him that your cousin Muslim has been taken captive and death is imminent. Tell him to retreat.
hate. As Muslim was led to the palace gate, he saw a jar of cool water. Let me drink, he pled, only to be met with cruel laughter. You shall not taste no drop until you taste the infernal heat. To which Muslim resorted, you are more deserving of hell's tormenting heat. O Ubaidullah, 3 times he tries to drink, but each time his cup filled with blood, his mouth opened, yet his lips touch nothing but cold flood. In Ibn Ziyad's presence, words were exchanged, temper was lost. Muslim commanded to the palace roof, a life was to be caused. Allahu Akbar, ascending the stairs, Allahu Akbar, reciting the takbir. Oh Allah, judge between us and those who deceived us, those who abandoned us. Facing towards Medina, he bid farewell to his beloved Hussein. They ascended with Muslim, his tears streaming like a river. His face turned to Hijaz, sending a message to his beloved Hussein. Abu Abdullah, I am slain, don't come after me. The people of Kufa have betrayed me. The moment they pledged their fealty, I am alone. Handed to the wicked Ibn Ziyad, they slayed Muslim. They threw him off the top of the qasr. Allahu Akbar. As the news of Muslims' death, brothers and sisters, we are about to finish the majlis. I want your hearts to be open to this part. I want you to imagine the pain as Muslims' death and the news of his death reaches Imam Hussein. He was overcome by grief. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. His tears flowed from his face. May Allah have mercy on you, O Muslim. You kept your promise and you will meet your Lord. Everyone around him was filled with sorrow, beating their chests and crying, Wa Muslima. In laments of the death of Muslim ibn Aqil, Imam Hussein then cried, Allahu Akbar. He cried and he called for Muslim's daughter Hamida. When she came to him, he seated her on his lap and he gently stroked her head, a gesture usually shown to orphans. Seeing this, Hamida asked, Uncle, you've never treated me like this before. Has anything happened to my father, Abu Abdullah? You've never done this to me. Has he been martyred, Ya Abu Abdullah? Imam Hussein reassured her, my child, I am now your father, and my daughters are your sisters. Upon hearing this, Hamida wailed, ومسلمة من إجت عدعمها حميدة قعدت توين وانا شديدة. Allahu Akbar. Hussein took great care of Hamida, constantly checking on her and keeping her company. She did not feel like an orphan, especially because she did not wish the tragedy of her father. However, the same can't be said for another girl. The same can't be said for Sakina, the daughter of Abu Abdullah. What did she see? She saw her father fallen and riddled with arrows. She cried and she threw herself on her father, his body looking like a porcupine because of the arrows. But the group of enemies wanted to separate her from her father. When they couldn't separate Sakina from Abu Abdullah, what did they do? They began to hit her with their whips. Ya boy, ya ضربوني وش كان بيده يا بويا أنا منين جتني الغاضرية. Who could see her without rushing to her aid? Who could she count on to keep her safe? She looks to them, hoping they'll protect her, but instead they beat her and drive her away. من ذا تؤمله بحفظ شؤونها، من ذا تراه مشمرا من دونها، أيا سوقها زجر بضرب متونها، من ترتجيه سائقا لضعونها، الشمر يحدوها بسب أبيها. الله أكبر، إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا على بيت محمد بأي منقلب ينقلبون، والعاقبة للمتقين. Ya Allah, oh Allah, we ask you in the name of